Here's a few questions from chapter 7, I think, um, that deal with solving quadratic equations. Now this one, when I look at it right off the bat, I'm trying to solve for a value of x that will make this statement true. If I'm squaring this stuff here, there's no way it can be a negative sign. So probably under the real numbers, I would say no solution, just right off the bat, because there's no way you can square something and get a negative number. Now with complex numbers, it's a different thing. We could solve that. So right off the bat, we could use, let me erase some of this stuff here. Um, so I'm solving. I want to solve for x. I want to get rid of this square. So I'll square root this side. If I do that, I have to square root this side. And see the problem there with the square root of a negative number? On the left side, the square and the square root cancel, leaving me with just x minus 7. And on the right side, I'll get the square root of negative 4. Now, square root of negative 4, I could split that into square root of negative 1 and the square root of 4. The square root of negative 1 is an I, square root of 4 is 2. So really, that thing is just 2i. So I could write x minus 7 is equal to 2i. One thing I forgot to do on that one, whenever you use the square root principle, you have to remember to put a plus minus there. So there should be a plus minus in front of all of that. Then I'll take the 7 and add it on both sides. So if I add it here and add it there, I'll get x is equal to, those cancel. And usually we write the I term last, so I'd write 7 plus or minus 2i. So my two answers are 7 plus 2i and 7 minus 2i. Okay, so that's for question 13. Now, if they want to know what it is under the real numbers, then I'd say no solution, because you can't take the square root of a negative number. But if complex numbers are in, then that would be my answer. Here's another question that deals with solving this quadratic. A couple of different ways that you could do it. It's sort of set up that you could do the complete the square, and I think that's what they ask you to do. So to complete the square with this, what I want to do is I want to get a perfect square, like x minus 3 squared or x plus 5 squared. I want to get this stuff here so that, like I did on the last question, I can square root that side. Okay, so I need to play the game and figure out what that is. So I need to add a number here on this side, and I'll add that same number over on this side too, but I have to figure out what that number is. To figure out what the number is, always take this middle term, so the 4, I'm going to go over on the side there. So take the 4, divide it by 2, and square it. And that'll give you this number, and it works every time. So 4 divided 2 is 2, 2 squared is 4. So that's what I'm going to add on both sides. So I'm going to add 4 here and add 4 there. So I have x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 6. Now I'd like to move the 6 around and do some other things, but you have to play the complete the square game. So leave the 6 here, and now I'm going to factor this part. Now it should come out even because I made it so that it would be like one of these guys. So if I factor it, I can go x and x, two numbers that multiply to 4 and add to 4. Of course, they're going to be plus 2 and plus 2 is equal to 6. And now I made it so that they would be exactly the same. So I'll write it as x plus 2 all squared is equal to 6. Now I have a question just like I had on the last page, except the last one had a negative in it. This one doesn't have a negative, so I should be okay to keep going from here. So I'm going to square root this side, and I can square root this side. This time I'm going to remember my plus or minus. So the square root and the square cancel, leaving me with just an x plus 2. And then on the right side, I have plus or minus the square root of 6. As I'm trying to solve for x, I'll subtract 2 on both sides. So I'll write x is equal to, and I'll write this minus 2 first, so it'll be a minus 2 plus or minus the square root of 6. I'd like to see if I can simplify that, but square root of 6, it doesn't come out even. And there's no number like 4, 9, 16, one of those pretty square numbers. None of those will divide evenly into 6. So I'm thinking I'm finished right there. Okay, hopefully that helps you with those two questions.